Okay, let's now focus on your diving roll. The main difference between a diving roll and a regular forward roll is that you're going to actually need to take up a lot of shock, a lot of force is hitting the ground when you're diving into your roll. We do this by forming that triangle, and we land on the ground, we use it as a shock system to take up that force and help our shoulder get closer to the mat. Here's that roll, we take up the shock, pulling it in. It's very important that those hands are in front of you, otherwise you're going to slam down onto the shoulder or on the collarbone. If you do that, you're more likely to break the collarbone than to break your fall. When you're working with your diving roll, there are two things that you're usually trying to do. One is either get height, and the other is to cover distance. For covering distance, we're going to need to learn to spring off of that lead leg, because we want one of our legs forward. With a diving roll, you can actually dive with both feet in this position. Because you're not standing in this position, you're actually landing your hands first. So it's not really important which leg is forward. You can run and you can spring off both legs, or you can spring off that lead leg into your diving roll. Just remember that what's most important is to get those hands to touch the mat first, at an angle, not forward. If you put them forward like this, you're more likely to roll over your spine. But if you put them at an angle, off of your center, this is your center, so you want to put them off your center line, and get that shoulder, and basically your hip and your shoulder, that stays on the center line. So we get those here, and then we can take up the shock and roll. Now when you're diving, this isn't something that you can usually think about because your hands are going to want to come here. It's okay to have your hands in front of you as long as you can get that head out of the way and get that shoulder in position. Until you figure that out, get the hands focused here. And what we do is we land and we use our forearm to kind of take up some of the shock. When practicing your diving rolls, make sure that you practice them on a very thick mat until you get used to taking up that shock. Also try practicing in a park where the ground has a lot of give, or even at the beach in the sand. When working with a diving roll, the key is to cover distance, to get from one area to another area, and usually when you do the diving roll, both of your feet are kind of leaving the ground, which means that you're going to hit the ground in some way, shape, or form. That can either be with one arm or it could be with both. How we do it in the system is we actually land with both arms, just like that triangle position that we taught in basic rolling. Both those land on the ground, and they help break the fall. They work as shocks to pull our arms in, get our shoulder to the mat, and then to tuck into that roll. As an example, right there. The main difference between a diving roll and a regular roll is that both your feet are leaving the ground and you're coming into the mat with a lot more force. When that happens, you need to have some way to take up that shock or to help protect yourself. Say we have our mat down. Now on a regular roll, your hands are coming here or here, and you're just doing your roll and you're rolling forward. On a diving roll, you're actually springing up and landing down. When that happens, all your body weight is landing right here. If you do not put your hands down to take up that shock, you're putting all that weight on your shoulder. You don't want to have that much weight on your shoulder. So you want to make sure that you have those hands out to take up that shock when you roll. You're landing on the ground with that triangle, taking up the shock, and coming into the roll. For practicing it, you're going to actually have to practice it from a standing position. Just placing your arms down, and then just work on taking up the shock. So it's right here, I'll push my body weight up. When you get used to it, then you can increase the height of your roll. and do a little more of a spring until you're more comfortable, where you can do more of a diving. Another way to practice this is to come into sort of a handstand and then take up the shock. Do that by coming into the handstand, collapsing one of your arms, and then going into the roll. When you're practicing your diving roll at home, get yourself a shinai, a large stick, or anything that will give so you don't hurt your partner. What you're going to do is just hold it at a certain height, and he's going to dive over. So if he's over here, and we start off low. We get down on one knee, and you just get it right here. He just do his regular roll, and then he does a little bit of the dive over it. Right here. This way he's not really jumping up too high. That's the warm-up. He goes back again. After you've done a few warm-ups, then you can increase the height of it a little bit, maybe up to about hip level. Here he's going to have to jump up a little bit. Notice he's putting his hands down on the mat to help break the fall. He's back. You're going to have to get a little bit more of a run. We're going to put it a little bit higher. Make sure that when you're practicing any roll or any fall or any advanced gymnastics technique that you have a nice soft mat, a lot of grass or sand, anything that will have give, so that when you're doing a roll, you don't increase your chance of injury.